My name is Darel Daik. I'm the owner and founder, CEO of Noble Mortgage and Investments. And this is a webinar that we're doing. We should do these in person, but of course, because of COVID-19, we're distancing. So I'm glad we have the technology to be able to do this. And also joining me is my good friend, Steve Rozenberg, who is in, where are you at again, Brazil?
Sao Paulo, Brazil.
He's in Brazil right now. Steve is been a real estate investor, also involved in a property management company for a long time, and he's also a pilot with United Airlines, but don't hold that against him.
That's right. I don't want to hear any bitching.
Anyway, so we're going to get started. If you guys have questions along the way, you're more than welcome to put them in the chat box, and I'll try to get to them as we go along. If Courtney can give me a heads up on that. If I miss any, I'll try to get to them at the end. My presentation will be first, and then Steve will follow. So anyway, thank you guys for joining us. If you want to introduce yourself on there as well, you can. Let's see here. Okay. And for those of you that are licensed realtor, Courtney, what are we doing for that?
They need to email events and Noble Mortgage.
Okay, if you're a licensed realtor, then my class, your class is CE credited as well, right, Steve?
This one is not.
It's not, okay. Well, mine is CE credited, which means you can get a 1-hour credit. So if you do need that credit, send us an email to, what is it, events@noblemortgage.com. You can also email me, which is askdarel, ASKDAREL, @noblemortgage.com.
Copy of driver's license and real estate license.
And we need a copy of your driver's license and your real estate license, and we'll be happy to send you that 1-hour credit. Anyway, thank you guys for joining us. Our first presentation is called 4 Steps to Communication. It's basically a presentation that I give about the personality assessment, behavioral assessment called DISC, which Steve and I have both become familiar with this. We had the same business coach for a while, and one of the first things that he did was have me take this DISC assessment. And so I never even heard of it. So I took this assessment, and it basically tells you about your personality, which is really fascinating. But what's more fascinating to me is it helps you understand other people's personality, how to read their personality by looking for certain cues, and then also how to better communicate with them. So this has nothing to do with my business as far as how we earn money or how my, what my business does, but I just became very passionate about it because I found it very, very effective, very helpful. I had my kids take it, I had my friends take it, all my employees take it. I use it at the office. So I find it very, very helpful. And there's lots of different behavioral assessments out there. Some of them are a lot more in depth, which is one of the reasons I like DISC, because it's very, very simple. It's just an easy way to get a read on people. And especially if you're in real estate and any business, but in real estate, you're always talking to different people. You're talking to contractors and other realtors and mortgage people and inspectors. And so the sooner you can figure out what their personality type is, the better off you are, because you're able to communicate with them effectively. So 4 steps to effective communication. And we're going to talk about number 1, understanding the styles, how people are similar and different. Number 2, become more aware and self-aware of how others see your style. We're going to learn how to identify the main DISC styles of others. And then most importantly, how to modify our own behaviors appropriately to improve interactions. And again, I think that's where the big value is here. Like I said, I use this for my employees, and in our break room, we have a big chart of the DISC assessment. It has everybody's picture there and exactly what they are, so it helps everybody communicate with each other. Just a brief history on DISC. This is the 4 different types of personalities was recognized as early as 444 BC by Empedocles, who recognized that people acted in 4 different styles, but he thought the environment affected their behavior, environment being fire, earth, air, and water. 44 years later, Hippocrates also complimented that and said, yes, he does agree that there are 4 different styles, but he thought it had to do more with the fluids in these people's body. It wasn't until 1921 that Carl Jung also went with that same recognition of 4 styles, and he thought it was more thought process, had to do with their personality and behavior. And this is where we have our chart of thinking, feeling, sensation, and intuition. And William Marston is the one who introduced the phrase DISC, also coming off of Carl Jung's thought process of thinking, feeling, sensation, and intuition. So this has been something that's been evolving for a long, long time. And here's our DISC chart. So if you notice, it's basically 4 quadrants. At the top, we have our thinkers. On the right, we have intuition. On the bottom, we have our feelers. And on the left, we have sensing. Hey, can I get rid of this? There. Sorry, I had something that was bugging me on here. Anyway, so DISC is an acronym, stands for, each letter stands for something different. So D, where we're going to start in the top right quadrant, stands for dominance. These people are thinkers, and they're also intuitive. Following down from there, we have our I's, which stands for influence. These people are also intuitive, but they're more feelers. On the left from that, we have our S's, which stands for steadiness. These people are more sensing, but they're also feelers. And then our top left is our C's, stands for compliance. These are thinkers, and they also use their sensing. So what is DISC and why should you learn it? It's a tool for observing and analyzing behavior. And what's important to remember is most people have at least 2 styles naturally. Very rare that somebody is just all D or all S or all I. Most people have 2 or more. I actually have 3, and that's pretty normal for people to have 3 as well. Why do you need to learn it? It teaches you how to better communicate and manage conflict, develop stronger sales skills. You know, my loan officers here, they keep this chart on their desk. In our CRM, they're required to put the customer's personality assessment on there. So when someone calls them, they know, who they're talking to. They're talking to an S or a D, because if you're talking to an S or a D, as you will learn here in a little bit, it's a completely different sales tactic, number one, but also just in how you communicate to them, how you introduce yourself to them is completely different. So you need to be aware of that. Also important to remember that no style is better than the other. There are successful people that come from all 4 styles. Everybody is probably a little more biased towards their style, but as you can see in my presentation here, we're going to go through there's 4 famous people that we're going to introduce. Are you doing the videos? Okay, so this is our DISC diamond. It's called the extended DISC diamond. So again, our top half are people that are task and facts oriented. The right half are people that are active. The bottom half are people that are people oriented and feelings oriented, and the left is for people that are a little more reserved. Yeah, we can skip it. Yeah. Our key points here, again, none of the styles are better than worse. Your style does not limit what you can accomplish and how successful you can be. It just predicts how you prefer to do things. And successful people are represented by all styles, and they are keenly self-aware and are able to modify their style. So what's important here also is someone who is maybe a D or an S, you can move around depending on what your situation is and what your motivation is. So there's no reason that you can't act a certain way, but it's just not what comes naturally to you. So number one, understanding the DISC style. So we're going to start with our Ds. D stands for dominance. And so we're looking at our DISC diamond. Ds are task-oriented, and they're also very active. And so one of the things I like to do is talk about people that you recognize and exactly what their style is. So a really good example of a D is Michael Jordan. If any of you had the pleasure of watching him play basketball, or if you saw that new series that just came out, The Last Dance, you can see Michael Jordan's real personality, exactly how he was. He's very decisive and tough, extremely competitive and demanding of his teammates, very strong-willed, independent, and self-centered. Ds tend to focus actively on controlling tasks and things. Under pressure, they tend to show a lack of concern. Their biggest fear is loss of control. And when it comes to change, their motto is things don't progress without change. So they're all about changing things to make them better. And their motto is do it now. So how do you identify Ds? Ds are pretty easy to identify in my opinion. Ds are very aggressive. They tend to be blunt and impatient. They focus on results. They tend to interrupt people and become irritated easily. They're very, very direct with people. They look you right in the eye. They're always looking for the bottom line, and they focus on the big picture. So Ds are great at very good at getting things done. Some of the issues that Ds have with running into Ds and working with Ds and having relationships with Ds is they tend to be a little abrupt and can be a little bit abrasive at times. So you'll recognize a D early on when you're talking to one because they're just very aggressive. And one of the frustrating things that I found about D, because I'm not a D, and for some reason I have a lot of Ds in my life, so maybe it's there for a purpose, but One of the most frustrating things to me, because I have a lot of C in me. C's are very, very, they tend to be perfectionists, and they like to be correct on what they're talking about. But one of the frustrating things for me about D's is they state their own opinion as a fact. So there might be something that is completely, they're just so sure of themselves, and they're selling it to you like this is 100% fact. And what you find out later is it's not. It probably has about a 50% chance of them being right on it. And so I found that very, very frustrating, because I don't like to state my opinion unless I am really, really sure that it's correct. And D's are the opposite. They'll give you an opinion about just about any and everything. And they don't care about being wrong. It doesn't bother them much. They move on to the next thing. So that can be a little bit frustrating. They make decisions very quickly. They're good at multitasking. They do have difficulty understanding other people's viewpoints or feelings. So they can be, again, a little bit abrasive, tough to work with, tough to be in a relationship with. Communicating with the D style, this is important. So again, if you recognize someone as a D, how do you communicate with that person? So Ds like to be very direct and brief and stick to the point. So one of the things I tell my loan officers is when you are talking to a customer on the phone, first thing you want to ask them is, if it's a Monday, for example, how your weekend was. And so a D doesn't care for small talk. They don't care about small talk at all. If they're calling you for information about a loan, then they want to get straight to the loan. They don't care to tell you about how their weekend was, what they did, if they have kids, blah, blah, blah. They don't care about any of that. So if a D immediately changes the subject and moves on, it's pretty easy to tell they're a D at that point, where some of the other styles need that little warm-up period or that chit-chat period. You need to make sure that this is a results-oriented approach. You need to be very logical when you're speaking with the D. Touch on the high points. Don't overuse data. They want to make a quick decision and move on. If you are dealing with the D in person, Ds don't like to be touched. So some of the styles, as we'll go through, are a little more touchy-feely, like eyes. I'm a high I, and so it doesn't bother me if someone pats me on the back or things like that. And I'm very much that way. But if you ever been in the presence of someone and you touch them on the shoulder and you notice they kind of back away and they just feel uncomfortable, then chances are you're talking to a D and or a C. C's are the same way about that. So they don't like to be touched. So keep your distance with them. Don't be emotional and do not try to dominate, because that'll just make them irritated. Next, we have our I's. I stands for influence, and our I's are also active like our D's, but they're more people-oriented. So I am a high I. I styles, my best I style example is Ellen DeGeneres. If you know who Ellen DeGeneres is, she's very, very charismatic, very, very fun person, talkative, energetic, loves being, being social with people, very persuasive and inspiring. They tend to focus actively involved with people and emotions. I's tend to be under pressure. They can be disorganized. And again, keep in mind when I'm talking about, the D's and the I's, when I'm talking about, their positives and negatives, this is considering that this is someone who is all I. So someone who is all I might be a little more, have some of these qualities. Someone who's a little more mixed, like I'm an I and a C, which are complete polar opposites. So I'm not ever disorganized. I'm always very organized, but I'm an I and a C, so it's different. Their biggest fear of an I is social rejection. Everything with them needs to be fun. This is probably a good example of me, because I like having fun at my office with my employees. I like having fun with my kids. If I'm in a relationship with somebody, I like, let's go have fun. I don't like anything that gets in the way of fun. If I have to deal with other things, I will, but I like to deal with them as quickly as possible so I can get back to having fun in my life. So that's a very, very good way to describe an I. How you identify an I, these are people that talk a lot. They can be very animated. They use their hands, a lot of body language when they speak, and they get very easily excited, and they're very open and friendly. They do tend to have a little bit kind of an ADD quality. They don't like to listen for too long because they like to be involved in the conversation. They tend to stay away from hard facts and do not pay close attention. Again, some of the I's, if they're all I, might jump from subject to subject and seem like a little bit in disarray and don't focus on the details, but they do like to talk about people that he or she knows. From a sales perspective, I's are great because they make very, very spontaneous decisions. They may ask the same question several times as well, because again, they're a little bit disorganized if they're all I's. When it comes to touch, I's are very, very comfortable with physical contact, pat them on the back, things like that. They're very, very comfortable with it, and you'll find that I's are going to do that to you as well. We used to play a video when we had this in person, but we're not doing our videos today. So how do you communicate with an I style? So again, opposite of a D who doesn't need time for socialization, I's definitely need time for socialization. So, you know, for the first 3, 4, 5 minutes, you do need to allow that time for small talk, getting to know them. Otherwise, they're not going to trust you or feel comfortable speaking with you. You need to lighten up and have fun. Ask for feelings and opinions. Again, it's okay to use touch on a forearm or a back. Be very friendly and warm. Do not ignore them. Let him or her speak and give them recognition. I's love recognition. And speak about people and feelings. On to our S's. Again, S stands for steadiness. So S's are very people-oriented and also very reserved. So my favorite example of an S is Peyton Manning. And we had a wonderful video that we're not playing. It's a great example of Peyton Manning and how much of an S he is. And it's a video of him right after he won his second Super Bowl. For those of you that don't know, Peyton Manning, he won the Super Bowl with the Indianapolis Colts and then won a second Super Bowl with the Denver Broncos. And so people were anticipating him to announce his retirement, which he actually ended up retiring after that game. But, you know, he just won the Super Bowl. And so all these reporters are jamming these microphones in his face and asking him all these questions. You know, how does it feel? You know, you won your second Super Bowl, one of the greatest quarterbacks ever, this, and that. And Peyton Manning's response was completely S. All he started doing was thanking everybody involved in his life. You know, he thanks his wife and kids. He thanks his teammates. He went back to talking about coaches, all the coaches that had spent time with him from the time he was a little boy to through college, and all the trips on the bus and the equipment people and his teammates. And I mean, he just thanked everybody in the entire world. He did not once use the word I, you know, I did this, I'm so great, blah, blah, blah. So it was a very, very good example of an S. And I love that interview. If you have a chance to look it up, look it up. It's very, very, it's very cool to watch. Anyway, they're calm and steady, careful and patient. They're very family oriented. S's are great listeners. If you ever have a friend who's just a great listener that you can just bend their ear and they don't need to talk that much, you're probably talking to an S. So S's make great friends, I've found. They're very modest. For example, my example with Peyton Manning, how modest he was. He didn't talk about how great he was. And they're also very trustworthy. Their focus is involved with familiar people. Under pressure, they tend to be too accommodating, which is very, very common of an S. Their biggest fear is loss of stability. And when it comes to change, they're not real big on change. You know, if it's fine, why mess with it right now? You know, only change if you absolutely have to. So they like just to kind of go with the flow and keep things the way they are. And their motto is, let's do it as agreed. How do you identify an S style? S's are very easygoing. They're very calm. They're very thoughtful when they speak. They listen very carefully. You know, if you're selling to them, they're not going to make a spontaneous decision like an I or a D would. They're one of these people that are going to say, oh, let me think about this. They tend to like their own physical space and don't get overly excited. You want to ask questions. I mean, they ask questions and inquire about the specifics of the situation. One of the frustrating things that I found about S's, at least from an employer standpoint, is when I run my company, I'm very big on getting my employees involved, getting their opinions, getting their thoughts. Everything we do here at Noble Mortgage, every system that we have is something that one of my employees throughout the last 17 years have come up with that we turned into our protocol. And so I'm very big on getting people's opinions because I'm a big believer that everybody has something to offer. I don't care what their position is. But my S's, it's very frustrating because they don't give you their opinion unless you really, really work on drawing it out of them. So if you have a room with an S and you have a D and an I in that same meeting, you're not going to get anything out of these S's because the D's and I's are going to do all the talking. So I found from a management standpoint, it's important to halt the meeting and talk directly to that S and get their opinion out of it. So you have to really work on drawing it because they have a lot to offer as well. New ideas and things like that can make them a little bit uncomfortable. And again, they're slow at making decisions. Oh, that's our patent interview. So communicating with the S style, you want to be patient, build trust. Again, draw out their opinions, present issues to them logically, and relax. You know, this should be a slow, steady conversation, allow time for discussions, involve him or her in the planning, provide the information that they need, and secure commitment step by step. So it needs to be a very process. They want to feel comfortable with you. And then lastly, we go to our C's. So C's are very reserved and task-oriented, and C stands for compliance. So my example of a C is Bill Gates. C's are very precise, detail-oriented. They tend to be quiet. They follow the rules. They're rule followers, very systematic and highly, highly logical and cautious. They're very formal and disciplined. And so the C's are, you know, tend to be very quiet about what they do. They take great pride in their work. Very, very spreadsheet oriented, if you will. A lot of people that I know that are C's, they run their entire life off a spreadsheet. I have a lot of C's that work for me here at Noble Mortgage. And I love C's because they're very smart and they're very, very, they rarely make mistakes because they take great pride in their work. And so I found that to be very, very good to have in the mortgage business, at least because we have to be, you know, very, very precise of what we do. Under pressure, that can be a little bit overly critical. Their biggest fear is criticism of work when it comes to change. Why do we need change? They want to understand it needs to be a logical process. And their motto is, let's do it right. How do you identify a C style? C's tend to be quiet and cautious. They're going to ask a lot of questions. Also, like our S's, are not comfortable with physical contact. They appear reserved and somewhat timid. They don't like confrontations. There's no need for confrontations in a C's life. It's very, very logic. Everything is logic. You know, confrontations come from emotion, and C's are very, very logical. So you're either right or you're wrong. And if you're wrong, then you just need to accept it because that's how the C is. You're like, this is how it is. You know, why are you going to be emotional and argue about it if you're wrong? You know, someone who's a little more emotional, maybe an I or a D, might just argue because they want to be right. So C's don't really care to get involved in that. So if you're selling to a C, they're going to ask all the questions. So these are the guys, if you're a realtor, for example, who are actually going to read the inspection report. I mean, they're going to read every single line item on there, make notes and put colored tabs on there. So very, very precise. So when you're selling to a C, you want to make sure and give them all of the information, every single piece of information that you can. And then they're going to put that in their spreadsheet and make a decision. You can't rush them because they need to have all that information. And so that's one of the things, one of the C qualities that I have is, you know, before I make any decision, I don't want, you know, 50% of the information or 75%. I want 100% of the information in front of me where I can digest it, and then I can make a decision. And so this is one of the things that I do here at my business, which makes me a good mortgage underwriter, because I underwrite our loans and make decisions on what loans we lend on. So if a loan officer comes in and they bring me, you know, the appraisal and that's it, you know, they ask me questions about this loan, I'm like, I can't make a decision on this. I need all the information. Bring me the application, bring me this, bring me this. So I want all the information in front of me. Only at that point can I make a decision, and only at that point will I make a decision. I'll send my loan officer out the door. I said, come back when you have a full file. Another interesting thing about C's is they're not emotional at all. So when you ask them how they are, you know, they say fine. They really mean that. They really mean they're fine. I had one of my employees, she was, if you guys remember, Erica that worked for me, she was pregnant, and her husband was a high C and her mother-in-law was a high C. So she called her mother-in-law to tell her that she was pregnant. And her mother-in-law's response was, oh, that's great. You know, good for you guys. I'm happy for you. And that was it. And so Erica's a high I. And so she was like offended. She thought her mother-in-law didn't really care that she was pregnant, and this was going to be the first grandchild and so forth. So she was all, you know, upset. And after she realized that she was a high C, she was like, oh, that's as emotional as she's going to get. So it's interesting. C's are not going to give you, they don't have, you know, they don't get really high, don't get really low. They're just kind of very, very steady. This is a great video too, but we're not going to show it. So communicating with the C style, again, use data and facts, examine the argument from all sides, stay on task, don't socialize, also like a D, they don't care to socialize, they're very, very logical. If you're going to disagree, disagree with the facts, not the person, because they don't care about confrontation. Focus on quality, do not touch. These are people that tend to like to have their own space. Be patient and slow down. Again, don't bring up personal issues and explain everything very carefully. So now that we've gone over how do you identify your own style, or identify the style. So we have 3 steps that we do to identify the 4 styles. We want to observe, assess, and then recognize. So observe what the person talks about. Again, are they talking more logical? Are they talking about people? Are they emotional? These are things you need to listen for, cues you need to listen for. How they say it, the types of words that they use. Are they very logical, robotic? You know, a C would be very robotic. Or are they more emotional? They talk about how they feel. Lots of emotion in there. Body language is very important. You know, I's and D's use a lot of body language. And also I's and D's tend to be louder. If you meet certain people that are very reserved, they talk real quietly, right off the bat, you know they're a C or an S. If they're loud and more animated and they use a lot of body language, right off the bat, you know they're going to be a D or an I. And also how their tone is. If they're very monotone, they're probably going to be an S or a C. If their tone, you know, fluctuates throughout each sentence or throughout each word even, they're going to be talking to a D or an I. So observe, again, what do our 4 styles talk about? D's are talking about goals. They talk about themselves a lot, hard values, results, and change. Our I's are talking about people, team spirit, good things, the future, oneself. And then you have our S's, which are a little more logical people like our C's are. S's talk about agreements, principles, past, proofs, and one's team. And our C's are all about facts. They talk about facts, analyses, details, rules, instructions. And then you assess. So again, look at our quadrant here. We have our right side of our quadrant, which is active, and our left side, which is reserved. So our active styles are D and I. So they talk about the future and how things could be. They speak with a fairly loud voice and inflection. They demonstrate body that is assertive and animated. So again, lots of body language and very animated when they speak. And another interesting thing is D and I's maintain strong eye contact. S's and C's, the opposite. They talk about the present, how things are now. They speak with a very calm and fairly quiet voice, and they tend to have hesitant eye contact. So that can be a frustrating thing for a D or an I who really, you know, love eye contact. A C and an S, you know, tend to don't like eye contact. They see that as confrontational. And a D or I see someone who doesn't give them eye contact as someone who's trying to ignore them. So if you're aware of these things, you won't get offended by it, whatever your style is. You learn that this is just their behavior style. So we assess, back to our assess again. On the top, we have our people that are task-oriented. So now we're C's and D's. And so our D and C styles, they talk and ask about things. They focus on task more than people, and they do not show a lot of emotion. Our bottom half of the quadrant, these are our quadrant, are our people-oriented. Our I's and our S's, they talk and ask about people. They focus more on people than task, and they show emotion very, very easily. So how do you recognize? Again, so going back to our quadrant, if they are task-oriented and active, we have a D. So they're going to talk about themselves and goals. They're very decisive, very assertive and patient. Again, how does it benefit themselves? They're looking at the big picture, and they make very, very quick decisions. Our I's are going to be active and people-oriented. They talk about people, team spirit, good things. Again, they're very animated. They also tend to talk loud like a D, but they're a lot more emotional. They tend to not pay close attention to the details, but they also make very, very spontaneous decisions. Our S's, now we're on the opposite side. These are reserved people, so they're going to talk a lot quieter. They're also people-oriented like our I's, but they're going to be very easygoing. They avoid confrontation. They just kind of go with the flow type of people. They don't get easily excited. They do like their own physical space. And then our C's are task-oriented and reserved. So our C's are all logic. Everything with them is logic. So facts, analyses, details. They proceed very cautiously. They like to ask a lot of questions, understand everything. They're very, very well prepared. So if you identify someone as a C, and you get into a disagreement with them, you better have your facts straight, because I guarantee you that C does. So that's why I love to hire C's. They're rarely wrong. Normally your C's are right most of the time, I've found, because they do all their homework. Step 4 is adjusting your communication style. So this is probably one of the most important things you can do, and it's just more about being self-aware. So if you're a D, okay, this is you. If you're a D, you need to be more patient, talk less and listen more. You need to allow time for small talk. You know, if you're a D and you're speaking to an I, you know, an I needs that small talk. So you need to slow down your presentation and get to know them a little bit. Focus more on feelings and emotion, and try not to dominate the interaction, and try not to come across as blunt and impolite. And so you have to be very, very self-aware, because it's not natural for you to be that way. Our I's can be a little more direct. If you're an I, talk less, listen more, remember to follow up, try not to get too emotional, slow down your presentation, and focus more on details and facts, and be careful not to be too, you know, touchy-feely in other people's space, because, you know, if you're talking to a D or a C, they may not like that. Our S's, if you're an S, you know, the opposite from an I, that we need to talk less, we need our S's to talk more. They need to focus a little less on details. Unlike our I's that we want to slow down their presentation, we want our S's to speed up their presentation, keep their emotions under control, and try to be a little more expressive and animated. And then lastly, our C's, also we need them to talk a little bit more, also like our S's, be a little more expressive and spend more time getting to know that person, and some chit chat to begin the conversations. Talk less about details and facts and figures, and be careful not to appear cold, impolite, and distant. And C's tend to be very robotic. Okay, that is my presentation. Let me stop my share and see if we have any. Do we have any questions that came along? No questions?
They're sharing.
Okay.
This is interesting. Helpful to self-reflect and also think about your relationships, conversations, and interactions with others. Can you be all 4?
I don't believe you can be all 4. No, you can be 1 to 3. I don't think you can be all 4, if I'm not mistaken. So the way they judge that is you take a behavioral assessment. If anybody would like it, I'd be happy to send it to you. And there's a line that's right in the middle. That's a 50% line. So if you come over that 50% line, that's considered one of your styles. So I'm an ICS, I believe. So my I is really, really high. Second is my C, and 30 is my S, and my D is very, very low. So if my D is less than 50% of my personality, then it doesn't show up on me. So I'm an ICS. And so what's interesting about this is I's and C's are very opposite. It's very rare that you find someone who's an I and a C. And so when I really started to grow my company, I was trying to figure out how to hire people in general. So I started using this behavioral assessment. And one of the most difficult positions to hire are salespeople. You know, loan officers are hard. Good loan officers are hard to find. So one day I had an epiphany, or what alcoholics like to refer to as a moment of clarity. And I decided that I needed to hire myself, because before I owned a company, I was a great loan officer. I'm like, I just need to find me. So that's what I did. I'm an I and a C. And so they're polar opposites. But here's the thing about being a loan officer. If you're selling cars, you typically just have to sell the car and then you ship into the back and let someone else do the paperwork. Well, in the loan business, it's different. You not only have to be charming and be able to deal with people and put that loan together and make them like you and want to do business with you, you also have to do the paperwork. And so once you're done selling, you have to fill out the 1003 application and input it into our system. There's a lot of detail work that goes into being a loan officer. And so I figured out that I need an I and a C, because when I hired somebody that was all I, yeah, they're great at making the sale and so forth, but they can't do any of the paperwork. And then if I hired someone who was all C, they're great at the paperwork, but nobody wants to talk to them, you know? So it's interesting. So I really found it helpful. I use it a lot with my hiring techniques, and ever since then, it's been really helpful. Someone says, yeah, if you would like to take the assessment, email me. Ask Darel, AskDarel. I'll put it in the chat box here at noblemortgage.com.
Also, follow email with the presentation and the assessment.
Yeah, if you're listening, we'll send you a copy of the presentation as well as the DISC assessment, and I'll even send it back to you we'll send it to you with instructions. Someone says I'm definitely an I, and I think S2 and maybe sometimes a D. You know, and another thing, what's interesting is you can move. Like I'm not D at all, but sometimes being a business owner is you have to be a D. And so I can do that when I need to. It's just not natural for me. Let's see. Yes, we will send to you, charity. We'll send everybody this. Okay, great. Okay, so that's my first presentation. I'm going to turn over to Steve. Steve, you with us?
I'm here, my man.
You haven't fallen asleep on me yet?
No, although you did, I had to bite my tongue when you used the word charming when you described yourself. That was a bit of a stretch there. I was like, oh boy, here we go.
Hey, that got me through high school, right?
Hey, whatever it takes, right?
Oh, Steve is all I.
Yeah, I'm off the charts.
Yeah, he's
I've
all
got a couple.
I.
And nothing else?
Yeah.
I don't know. Are you anything else, or are you all I?
You know, being a pilot, you've got to have some C and D in you.
Yeah, I
Honestly.
imagine. Especially
I'm kind
T,
of
I
a weird
imagine.
mixture. Yeah, it's a weird mixture because, you know, all the different roles. I'm definitely, my dominance is I. And, you know, then I've got the C and D in me being an airline pilot, you know, doing the business stuff and all that. You've got to have that systemization. But like, you know, kind of like you said, I'm a big believer, and I hire those roles that I'm weak in, because I'm not good at dotting the I's and crossing the T's. That's just not my skill set. So
Yeah.
do what you do best and flourish, and then outsource what you don't, you know, is the key.
Yeah, and I agree. And another thing that's interesting is your personality can change. So when I first started my business, I was a much higher C than I am now. But I needed to be much more vocal and be involved in doing lots of public speaking and socializing and networking. So then my I took over. Like I went through a change. My I is much higher. My C has gone lower.
Yeah, they say that you know, your environment, your education, your surroundings, and then obviously, you know, when you get stressed, you're going to revert back to what you are, which is why people, once they're in they're very stressed, all of a sudden they just explode, and they're like, I don't know where that came from. They're reverting back to their original disc.
Very true. Very true. Yeah, somebody just asked that question. Can you evolve into something else? And I think the answer there is you can if you're motivated. So me starting a business, I was motivated to be successful in my business. So I started doing a lot more networking functions. And when I first started doing public speaking, I used to find it physically exhausting. I would speak for an hour and I would be physically exhausted afterwards. And now I feed off it. Now I enjoy it. I can do it every day. So you can change.
Absolutely.
All right, Steve, I'll let you share your screen and take over. If you guys have questions, I'll try to pay attention to them here.
It says host has disabled screen sharing. That would be you.
Okay, Courtney? You have it?
No. Did you stop sharing your screen?
Yeah, I stopped sharing. Hold on a second, guys. I'm having technical difficulty.
Right. Maybe enable attendee sharing.
It says make Steve a co-host. Is he not a co-host?
Oh, why? Show me on my screen.
I haven't elevated to that level yet.
Sorry, we had to keep an eye on you.
Yeah, it's probably better.
Okay, hold on. She's going to do it right now. There, now try it, Steve.
There we go.
You good?
Yep. All right. So here, Then we're going to go here. Can you see my screen, Darel?
Yep.
All right. Well, everyone, thanks, Darel. Obviously, thanks for having me, man. I love doing stuff with you. We've done a lot of stuff in the past, and I always enjoy it. You guys got a great crowd, great people. Today, what we're going to talk about is the benefits of investing in real estate. We're going to go through the steps, and I'm going to go through kind of the basic pillars, and maybe I don't think I'm going to teach you anything that maybe you don't know, but I'm probably going to reiterate a lot of things that maybe you've forgotten, or just give you a different vantage of how to look at these things. So for those of you that don't know who I am, I've been involved in the real estate business for a very long time, 20 plus years. As Darel said, I'm an airline pilot. I fly for United Airlines. I'm an active investor. I own real estate all over Houston. I've also created a business that we built from zero to about 1,000-door property management company called Empire Industries that we recently sold. I've written a book, published author. I've been able to speak all over the United States, as well as all over Australia on tour, helping investors, helping business owners. So I kind of, Houston is my home, but I do a lot of traveling. I do a lot of speaking. I do a lot of stuff with Bigger Pockets. I'm a host there. So I do a lot of stuff. I'm kind of in the mix of the heat of battle, I guess you could say. So there's 4 things I want you to realize when it comes to owning real estate. The first is you got to have goals, which is your destination. And we're going to break these down, but I want you to write these down. Then you got to have a strategy. The next thing you got to have is your tactic or your financial picture. And the last thing you have to have is your exit strategy. So let's just talk about these for a second. The goals are where you want to go in life, right? So let's just say you are investing in real estate and you're just buying deals to buy deals. And a lot of times we think that the buy and hold, the flipping, the wholesaling, a lot of times people confuse that with a goal. But that's actually just a strategy to get you somewhere. The buy and hold, the flipping, those are either cash flows, equity captures, but whatever the reason is, those are strategies, which is kind of like saying, I'm just going to get on the freeway. Well, if you get on the freeway, the question you should be asking is, where are we going? And where you're going is the goal and the final destination. And so you always want to think about having that goal before you even get started. See, I know because I was one of the people that just started buying houses to buy houses. And after I had about 35 shitty houses, I realized I bought the wrong ones. Now, when I say they're the wrong ones because they did not align with my goal because I didn't have a goal. And no one ever asked me, hey, Steve, why are you buying all these houses? This is not what you say you want. Now, the tactic is actually the vehicle on the road. It's the house, it's the apartment, it's the house, the mobile home, whatever it is you're buying, that is the tactic. The challenge is a lot of us, we do this backwards. We get the tactic, then we try to make the strategy fit the tactic, and then we just see what the goal is. But if you were to do that while you're driving your car, you would see how backwards that actually is when you put it in that perspective. And so what I'm trying to help people understand is that you've got to come up with your end destination first. Then you got to figure out the roadmap to get there, which is the way you're going to buy these properties and what you want. And always ask yourself, are they taking you closer or further away from your goals? Just because you're on the freeway doesn't mean you're going in the right direction. I know a lot of people that bust their butts all day long and they find out that they did nothing to get them closer to the goal. And those days turns into weeks, turns into months, turns into years, and then you feel defeated. The last thing most people miss is the exit strategy. And we're going to talk about the exit strategy, but I don't know, and I'm curious if anyone you can put in the comments, has anybody actually thought of what their exit strategy is? Meaning, is it buy and hold, living off the cash flow? Is it passing it down to generations? Is it a 1031 exchange? Dying? I mean, whatever it is your exit strategy is, you have to have one. You may not know it, but you have an exit strategy eventually. But you've got to really think about when you're buying a property, am I going to put this in an LLC? Am I going to put it in a trust? Is this going to go down to my children? Generational wealth. A lot of people don't think about the exit strategy, and most people never, ever think about the goals. And like I said, I'm not anyone that hasn't done this because I was that person. I never thought of the goals, and I never thought about how I was going to exit these deals, because that could affect and that could change how you actually buy these properties. You may or may not buy a property based on your time frame, your strategy, your exit, or your goal. So next, let's talk about the goals. You've got to start with the end in mind, in my opinion. That is the easiest way. And then you got to work yourself backwards. Now, whenever I've mentored, coached, or helped people, the first question I ask them is, why are you doing this? Like, why are you trying to get into the sandbox to start playing with real estate? If they don't know the answer, well, that is not going to carry them through the dark days and dark nights that you're going to go through when you own real estate. You have to make sure that you have your why. And your why is that end goal, the North Star, whatever you want to call it. But it's the reason that you get up and the reason that you keep grinding it out when deals don't work and you get ripped off or whatever the case may be. And if your why is not strong enough, that's why you'll quit. And that's why you'll give up. So you really want to think about, what is the goal and what am I doing with this goal? Now, a lot of times, I'll just say this, it's my opinion, that a lot of us as investors and entrepreneurs can be very selfish. And what I mean by that is we come up with these goals, we come up with these strategies, we come up with all these cool things, and we're on these webinars, but we never go home and actually share it with our spouse, our loved ones, our children, our business partners. So you're like in this little vacuum vertical, and you're doing these things, but nobody really knows what you're doing. You're like the crazy guy that you go to a seminar or a conference, and you come home and you're like, we're doing this, and now we're going to buy this, and now we're buying that. And everyone else is like, what the hell are they doing? Like, oh, they went to another seminar, that'll wear off. But if you were able to have that alignment with your family and with your loved ones and your business partners so that everyone's on the same page, you'd be able to share that information. And I was one of those people too. I was so focused that I wanted to fix everything. I didn't realize that I was actually part of the problem because I was keeping it all inside. And why you may be wanting to invest and why you may be wanting to own real estate, how do you know your spouse wants that too? Because that little rock between you will become a very big boulder, which will become a huge canyon over time. Because as we all know in real estate, there are dark days. There are days that you're going to have to come out of your pocket. You're going to pay for stuff. You're going to get ripped off. That's just the sandbox we all play in. But if your why is not strong enough and you don't have enough people communicating with you and you're not on the same level, you're never going to get there. So I say you got to work it backwards. My suggestion is you can start with a 10-year goal, work it down to, 20-year goal, a 10-year goal, 5-year goal, 3-year goal. So going to what Darel had talked about earlier, being a C, what I would suggest is, let's just say you say, I want to own 20 properties free and clear in 20 years, 20 for 20, and I want $20,000 in cash flow, 20, 20, 20, right? It's very simple. So I'd say, okay, that means by 10 years, you probably need to own all those properties and maybe start paying them off. So by 10 years, you have to own 20 properties. That means in 5 years, you've got to pretty much own 10 properties, which means you've got to be buying 2 properties a year. So you see how you got to do this. You got to work it backwards. So if you got to buy 2 properties a year, that means you need about 3 months to find a deal, close a deal, get it ready, get it rented, get it making cash flow. It's about a 3 to 4 month period. So that means every 5 months, you need to start looking for a property. So do you see how you can start making these goals? Now your mind works in 90-day increments. That's the way the brain works best. That's why there's 4 quarters in the year. That's why when you do goals and you see these 90-day challenge and all these things, because that's how your brain works best. So if you can do something in a 90-day cycle, you're going to be able to accomplish this, but you should always be referencing your end goal. And, as Darel said, we were both coached by the same coach at one point. And whenever we'd come up with these harebrained, crazy ideas, the first thing our coach would ask us is, that's great, but does it align with your goal? I'm not saying you can't do it, but then you have to change your goal. Don't try to convince yourself. It either is or it isn't. So when you're setting your goals and you're thinking of your strategies, does it align with your goals? Now, here's the thing. A lot of times when we don't know our goals, we cannot identify what's a good deal. I'm sure Darel has people come to him all the time and says, hey, Darel, is that a good deal? Well, Darel's probably going to say, I don't know. I don't know what a good deal is to you. I could say it's a good deal, but it could make you go bankrupt because you don't have the financial liquidity to back it. So if you don't know what a good deal is, do you really think that you should be asking anyone else, is this a good deal? You should ask questions and get people's opinions after you know where you're going and you know your destination, and you take that information in and you process it based on your final goal. a lot of people want someone to give you the answer. And the reality is that's not how this works. They're probably going to give you an answer based on their goals. So if Darel was buying a bunch of $150,000 houses and you came to him with a $150,000 house, but you wanted to flip it and there was no flip market in that range, and you said, hey, Darel, is this a good deal? Based on what his goals are, he's going to go, yeah, it's a good deal. I'd buy it. Darel would buy it. Doesn't mean you should buy it. So a lot of times we get confused and then we blame people. We go, oh, that guy, he ripped me off. He lied to me. Well, it's up to you to actually know what your goals are and to work your plan, and then you reference it against them. I always say, don't fall in love with the deal. You fall in love with the results. It's what the deal gives you. Remember, real estate is math. There is no emotions. There is no gut feelings. It is data and it is numbers. And if you cannot quantify and justify the data and the numbers based on your goals and based on your strategies, then you probably should not buy the deal. Whoops. So again, really think about that when you're looking at a deal. Never ask anyone if it's a good deal unless you know if it's a good deal for you, and that good deal is based on your strategy and it's aligned to get you to your goal. You use them as information. Don't use them as the source, right? Now, Darel's a trusted guy. He knows all this stuff. You may be able to say, hey, Darel, here's my plan. This is what I'm trying to do. Am I missing something? That's a different story than just saying, is this a good deal? Because it's like you driving down the freeway. If you pull over and I'm walking down the street and you say, hey, can I get directions? What's the first thing I'm going to ask you? Where are you going? Where's your destination? And if you say, I don't know, then I'm going to say, well, then I can't give you directions. Same thing when it comes to real estate. If you don't know your destination, don't ask people for help. So let's talk about the strategy. There's 5 reasons, in my opinion, and in many other opinions, of why you do and why you do not buy real estate. These are the deciding factors as to whether or not a deal will make sense as part of your strategy. I don't care what you think and what you say they are. It comes down to 5 of these reasons. The first one is cash flow. Then you have equity capture. Then you have appreciation, depreciation, debt pay down, okay? So you've got 5 things. So the question is which one is better? Well, every investor weighs these benefits differently. What's important to Darel may not be important to me, right? We may have a different goal and a different strategy. Some people bank on cash flow, right? Other people bank on appreciation. Some people just want equity capture. Depends on your market, depends on your strategy, depends on a lot of variables. Now, I know a lot of newer investors, they hang their hat on cash flow. And I'm going to show you why I think that's a mistake. And obviously it depends on your situation, but I do think that it's normally a beginner investor or a newer investor, I'll say, and it's more ego driven than really financial driven, in my opinion, when people talk about cash flow. I'm not saying cash flow is wrong. I'm just saying the reason they're basing their facts and figures is a naive decision. If anyone has any questions on this, obviously I can answer them. But again, these are the 5 reasons, and I'm going to go through a little scenario that'll show you what they mean. And if you don't know, I'll try my best to answer them for you. The third is the tactic, the financial picture. So when you're thinking about driving to Disneyland, to your destination, you're going to take certain freeways, and those freeways are your strategy. Think of the car you're driving as the tactic. So that's the tactic that's going to get you onto the freeway to your destination. So in easy terms, if you were in Los Angeles and you wanted to go to Disneyland, you probably would not be driving a snowmobile on the 405 freeway, right? You would be driving a car, maybe a motorcycle, maybe a motorhome, right? Think about that in real estate. If you're getting a deal that is like a snowmobile on a freeway, is it going to work? Well, you can see that pretty clearly that doesn't make sense. But many people buy deals, they buy tactics based on a strategy that it doesn't align with, and then they don't know why it doesn't work. So let me throw a scenario out here for you, and I'll give your guys' opinion. So if I were to tell you, hey, I've got this deal for $150,000, it's worth $150, cash flow is $200 a month. Question is that a good deal or a bad deal? And I'm curious what, you guys can go ahead and put something in the comment. So I'm curious what you think. So the answer is, it depends. It depends on what your goals are. It depends on what your strategy is, and it depends on what your deal is. Now, I'll show you why, based on my goals and my strategy, why this makes a good deal. So let's say I purchased the property for 120. I said it was worth 150. The reason it always depends is you don't have enough information to decide whether or not it's a good deal or a bad deal. I purchased the property for 120. That's a $30,000 equity capture, okay? I don't know of many other investments that I can sign on the dotted line. And by doing basically nothing, let's say the seller was motivated, they're getting divorced, there was a death, there was a downsizing at their company, the 3 Ds, and they had to sell. Well, the property is still worth 150. They just had a motivational personal reason that they had to sell it. I could turn around and I could sell that house for 150. So I could make $30,000 by signing a piece of paper. That's called equity capture. Okay, so far we've got cash flow of $200, which some people say, oh, $200, that's not enough. I need more money. Then I say, okay, now you're gonna make $30,000 in equity capture. And then they go, well, you know what, that's okay, but that's not enough. Because let's be realistic. That $30,000 doesn't go into your pocket. It's what's called unrealized capital gain. So you have it, but it's not actually in your bank account. Now, let's say this is standard, and Darel, you can tell me if I'm right or wrong on this, but let's say it's a $120,000 house. You put 20% down, very basic, plain, and you're gonna put $24,000 down, so you're gonna get a loan from the bank for $96,000, okay? So now you're in partnerships with the bank. I don't know of any other investment that I could go into a bank and say, hey, I'll give you 20%, you give me 80%, and we're gonna be partners. And oh, by the way, I want all the tax deductions, I want the cash flow, and I want the appreciation down the road, and I'll pay you 3, 4, 5 points on this 96,000, and we're gonna do this dance for the next 30 years. Who pays that back? The tenant pays this back. Now, don't get me wrong, you're gonna have vacancies, you're gonna have maintenance, you're gonna have all that shit. But basically, for the next 30 years, you are gonna have a tenant pay that debt down to 0. That's called debt pay down. Now, that's not a reason to buy or not to buy, because that's going to happen regardless, right? You can be a real shitty landlord, and eventually you're gonna get a tenant to pay down your debt. Now, it may not be enough, but you'll get it to pay it down. So debt pay down is going to happen on its own. The equity capture is gonna happen by your negotiating. The price that you purchase it at will happen with your negotiating for the equity capture, but the debt pay down is gonna happen. But the key here is that you have a leveraged position. If you went in and said, I wanna buy $100,000 of stock, Mr. Bankman, give me $80,000, I'll put in 20, let's go buy some Google. Do you think they would give that to you? I don't. Now let's look at what happens. Properties double in value on the East Coast and West Coast of the United States every 7 to 9 years. Now, in the middle of the country, it's every 12 to 15 years. The key to this conversation is that land depreciates over time, right? I'm sorry, the structure depreciates. Standard line is 27.5 years, that the government says after 27.5 years, your property be worth 0 because it's a rental property, but the land goes up. So let's just take easy math and say, if I had this property for 30 years and it was worth $150,000, what would that property be worth in Houston, Texas, if you based it on those numbers? Anyone have a guess? What would you guys say? 30 years, property's worth $150,000 when you buy it. What would you guess that property be worth based on this statistic? It would go from 150 to 300, and then it would double again to 600. Yeah. That is what's called appreciation. Now, let's just say we're being conservative and you go, yeah, it's a down market, that doesn't happen. Now, if you take this across the United States, this is a statistical variable that has been constant since they have been recording real estate. There's dips and there's gonna be times, but generally it's gonna double and double every 12 to 15 years in the Midwest. So let's just say that house is worth $500,000 now. There is no cash flow in the world that will ever outpace appreciation in real estate. If we all thought back to owning property, wherever we grew up, whatever town that is, think of what that piece of real estate has done over time. Don't think of the number, just think over the last 30 years, has it doubled and doubled again? If it was 30,000, it probably went to 60, and then maybe it went to 120, right? That is what appreciation does. Now, I put 24,000 down, which was 20%. But now based on it's 4.8% based on a $500,000 loan. So now I'm in a deal for 4.8%. I own an asset that's worth $500,000. And once my $24,000 is returned back to me, I get an infinite return on this investment, right? Now, here's the best part. This is the whole part to owning real estate if your strategy is buy and hold. What goes up as the value goes? Once it goes from 150 to 180 to 200 to 300 to 400, does the mortgage go up? Nope, you still have a $96,000 mortgage. Taxes, insurance, yeah, that's gonna go up a little bit, right? That's gonna be a variable, it's gonna go up. But what does go up? Your rent and your cash flow. So let's just say Houston is sitting at about a 0.92% of the value. So let's say you were renting it, you bought it for 150, you were renting it for, let's say, 1420. Well, when it's worth 300,000, what do you think you're gonna be renting it for? Maybe 2,500, maybe 2,600? As it keeps going up in value, so does the rent. So here's the challenge most people have when they're looking at real estate. They take a snapshot of what it's doing today of $150,000 and $200 cash flow for a future goal. If I said to you, hey, Darel, do you need the $200 right now? Like, why are you buying this? And Darel says, I'm buying this for a future. I want to have this when I retire. I would say, well, then why do you care if it's even making you $1 right now? Why don't you go to what it's going to make you in the future? Use that as your barometer and your goal. That's the challenge, is we want our egos to tell us what we should be doing right now when we don't even need or want the money right now, but we base all the value on cash flow. I said, if you retired and you were still getting $200 a month off this property, would that be a good deal? Well, no, then it wouldn't be a good deal. Well, then why are you worrying about it right now? Let's go to where it's going. It's like in hockey, they say skate to where the puck's going to be, not where it's at. So a lot of people right now, they're looking at what it is today and they're making a decision. I would be looking 30 years or whatever that is down the road at my goal and go, okay, when I get to my goal, is it going to be there? Now, it could or it could not, but statistically speaking, it probably will. And again, to me, appreciation is the #1 reason that you buy and hold. That is the only reason. East Coast, West Coast, 7 to 9 years. Midwest, it's every 12 to 15. Just remember, investing is numbers. It is not emotions. Purely data and numbers, not gut reactions and feelings. The last thing I want to talk about is the exit strategy. So we've got different exit strategies. Let's say you're flipping properties. Well, keep flipping could be your exit strategy. That's a job, but you still could be doing it. You could sell your portfolio. You could just live off the cash flow. You could pass it down to an inheritance, or you can do a 1031 tax deferred. Waiting is also an exit strategy. You may say, you know what, the market's not doing what I need right now, so I'm going to wait. But the reason I'm bringing this up is a lot of people never even think about what the exit strategy could or should be. And so they never even think about how they're going to get out of a deal. It's like when you start a business, one of the first things I was taught is, what's the sale date of the business? Doesn't mean that you have to sell the business, but it's got to be running on its own so that it is a sellable asset, so that it's operating without you. Same thing with your real estate. You want to have this bundled up so that you know where you're going with it. If you think about this, if you have no idea what you're going to do with it, and you're just grinding, at some point you are going to need to make a decision, because we're not going to live forever. And we have to think of what is that strategy. So that's pretty much it. If somebody wants to ask me questions, I do a free weekly mastermind. If anybody wants it, you can go to my website. I'm happy to do it. Darel's been on there a couple times. Darel did a great job. Happy to help people and take questions. I do have something. If you go to my website, that's a very long URL. I don't know why it's so long, but if anybody wants, I am going to give away a free cash flow calculator. All you got to do is put in the code NM, Noble Mortgage Free, in the promo code, and I will give it away for free. It's a cash flow calculator. It will give you all the stuff that we just talked about. And again, it's my gift to you for being here and listening to my rhetoric. If you guys want to follow me online, Steve Rozenberg, professional, follow me on Instagram or LinkedIn. And that is pretty much my spiel. And also, again, my website is steverozenberg.com. If you go there and you go to the product section, you go to cash flow calculator, hit in the NM free, and it's a free gift. That is pretty much all I have. I'll unshare, and then Darel, if we want to take questions, I'm happy to do so.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. That was great.
My pleasure.
Great presentation. And are you going to be giving away your presentation as well, Steve? I can't remember.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I'm happy to do it. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, if you could email it to Courtney. So those of you that wanted a copy of the presentations, if you were on this webinar, you will receive it along with the DISC assessment if you want to take that, and we'll give you instructions on how to do that. Anybody have any more questions before we wrap this up? I don't think we have any on there. Let me just look. Someone said do the mastermind on Mondays. That's Steve's. That's on Facebook. How do you do that, Steve?
It's if you go to my website, there's a mastermind page. It's completely free. You just fill it in. You fill in your information, and then you'll get an email link to it. It's on Zoom. We had about 120 people on last Monday. We've been with you. I think, Darel, we had about 100. Got about 1,000 people in the group, and I've got a Facebook group, Think Tank Real Estate Mastermind.
Yeah.
And it's just a community. Look, I'm just like everyone else, Darel. We're all in this, and we're all trying to be better. So, I mean, we can all help each other.
And your website is steverozenberg.com?
Yeah, steverozenberg.com.
Here, I'll put that in the chat box.
Someone's asking if my son is still investing. Yeah, he is. He's actually doing a lot of stocks right now. Fucker's beating me on my numbers, but he's actually doing pretty good. But yeah, he is investing. We're looking at another deal. He had his money saved up, but we took that money and we rolled it into, he wanted to buy some stocks during all the stuff crashing. He looked at the numbers and he said, yeah. So yeah, he's looking to buy another deal though soon.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I don't see any more questions. Well, I put your website on there. You can also go to our website, noblemortgage.com, have more information about us. Also, guys, if you're enjoying these events we've been doing, our next real estate virtual networking event is September 8th. I'm sorry, August 25th is our next Tuesday. We're actually doing a happy hour, which will be in the evening at 7 o'clock. But you can go to noblemortgage.com, click on events, and all this information is on there. We have another one on September 8th. And then we're doing a webinar on September 15th with Jason Bible, and then another networking event on September 22nd. But go to noblemortgage.com to find all that information. You can RSVP. All right, Steve, thank you, my friend.
My pleasure. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Hopefully I'll see you on the mastermind or somewhere down the road. I'm sure once these networking events get started up again, I'm sure I'll see you at Darel's event.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, my friend. Safe travels on the way back.
All right. We'll see everyone. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye, guys.